Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning meditation class. It's lovely to see you and be with you. We've got a nice day here in the DC area. The sun's out, which is nice for February. We are in February, aren't we? Yes, February. And just a warm welcome to you. Just a few introductory words. My name is Hugh Byrne, many of you know, and I've been teaching a class on Sunday morning going back to 2000 and with IMCW since 2003. And, for 20 years or so, it was in person. But for the last, since really the beginning of COVID, we've been online. Occasionally, we've had an in-person, but just a couple of them in the last probably 6 months or a year. But right now they're online, and if and when we go back to in person, it would include. It would then be hybrid. We're not going to go back to just in person. But anyway, this is a class offered by the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW, and the Center for Mindful Living, which is a part of IMCW and has, very kind of active Sangha-led, volunteer-led community. We had a center in Tenley Town, but obviously with COVID, after paying for it and not using it for almost 2 years, we had to give that up. So, and then we've been, we haven't had a space of our own. So this is really the IMCW, and within IMCW, the Center for Mindful Living. And we'll share information about both IMCW and the Center at the end, the links if you don't have them, and how you can be part of the Google group and, newsletter and all of that. So we'll do that at the end. Just want to welcome any new folks who haven't been to this class or haven't been to anything offered by the Center or by IMCW. If you are new, we really send out a warm welcome to you, invite you to put in any information where you're joining us from, today, or where you're living or where you're joining us from. And we'll give you a warm welcome and welcome everyone. Most people are fairly regular, as I see on the Hollywood squares, and always great. I don't know what you can have different views, but I prefer to see people in that way. I don't like to specifically be looking at myself talking. But anyway, it's nice to just see everybody, 25 or so different people. And if you can, if you feel you're able to, or, conditions allow, it's lovely to see you in person. But if you're not able to, it's great just to have you here on audio or however you're here. So with that, Melissa, welcome to you, joining second time from Arlington. Great to have you with us. Very, very, very warm welcome. You're in our area, unless you're in Arlington, Texas, but I think it's Arlington, Virginia. Yeah. So very warm welcome to you, and hope you can, connect, with the community here and the wider community, and feel very much part of it. Before just a little bit on the format of the class. Typically, what we include is we begin with a meditation, and in the past, what I've done is kind of gone from the meditation to a talk of 30, 35 minutes or so about an area of the Dharma, or the area of the teachings of of the Buddha and other wisdom teachings, and then followed by Emily leading movement. I think what we're going to do today, we talked about, is having Emily lead the movement after the meditation. So if I space out, just remind me, and then we'll have the talk, because in the past few weeks, the movement has been right at the end, and probably it'd be most helpful more closer to the beginning. Anyway, that's just part of the sausage making, vegetarian sausage making. And then we typically have a little bit of time for sharing. And often what we do, normally we finish at 12, and then if folks want to stay around, they can, or if they need to leave, then leave at 12. And we have informal sharing, and typically I'll stay around for at least half an hour, and we can continue the discussions and questions and anything that comes up. I'm not able to do that today because we've got a fairly important meeting coming up very soon after we finish here, so I've got to kind of move into that mode pretty much at 12. But if we have the conditions to stay around, if somebody can hold the space open, then we'll be able to continue in that informal way after, just in community sharing whatever's alive for us. So maybe just a reflection as we move into the meditation. All of the teachings really revolve around how each one of us can live more freely in the midst of our lives, whatever our lives are, whatever we do, whatever our family situation or home situation or work situation, or whatever, life situation, whatever stage of life we are. You could say the promise of these teachings is to help us live more freely, live with more joy, more peace, less stress, less worry, and as I say, the promise of the teachings is that we can actually let go, end suffering completely in our lives. Just that we have the capacity, we have the possibility of the deepest possible freedom, deepest freedom that's possible in this human life. That's something, each one of us can choose. Is that something that's important to me? We could be here for 100 reasons, we could each one of us, different things we want to get out of it, and it may just be a little bit more peace in your life. Maybe you just heard that meditation is helpful for de-stressing and all of that, and just you want to learn some techniques or skills to do that, and that's wonderful, perfectly great. You might kind of go deeper after that, but that's entirely one's own choice. The Buddha said, these teachings are not something to kind of take on and believe, swallow whole, but rather to explore, to see for ourselves, to really test in our own lives. Is this helpful for me? Do I find I'm living with more peace, more ease, more joy, less worry, less fear, all of that? Or maybe not, and then maybe we could do something else, and so it's completely our choice to do that. So the meditations and the talks are really just ways of helping us kind of orient ourselves to do that. It's not like taking us on a journey or anything. It's just like, okay, the instructions that we might give in meditation, the guidance is just kind of like, see what happens if you hold your experience in this way, just to open to, whatever's here right now, and with kindness, without judgment, etc. And then, it's up for each one of us to work with that in whatever way we can. Similarly with the talk, to do that, the talk is just a kind of a pointer. Does it help? Does it help to kind of spur something in you, or inspire something in you, or point to something that, maybe you haven't looked at? Anyway, with all that, just as a kind of an introductory few words. What we'll do is we'll meditate for about 20 minutes, and that what I focus on today in the meditation is just bringing a non-controlling attitude to whatever is coming up, and meeting whatever is here with kindness, with acceptance, without, I've got to change this because it's uncomfortable or do something. If we need to change, that's fine. But not to not to make it a thing about doing, but just kind of being with whatever is arising and see what comes of that. So let's begin by finding a posture that's comfortable for you. So whatever will work for you. Mostly we'll be sitting down, and if you're sitting, it's helpful to have a straight back. Invite the shoulders to relax. Let your hands rest wherever they're comfortable, on your knees, on your lap, on your thighs. And whether you keep your eyes open or your eyes closed is really up to you. If you close your eyes, it can be helpful just to let the attention come inward. If you keep your eyes open, it's helpful just to have a soft, unfocused gaze. So we're not like gazing around, looking at things, but just letting the gaze be open. And either way, just letting the attention come inward. Particularly dropping down out of the thinking mode where we spend so much of our time. And just coming down into the body. Just feel your body in contact with the surface beneath you, the feet with the floor. See if you can feel the feet from the inside. Your hands, whatever they're in contact with. Feel the pressure, warmth, sense of contact. And again, see if you can just feel the hands from the inside. You might notice some tingling or pulsing, warmth, coolness. And whatever's here. And it's helpful to bring your attention to your breathing. Just notice how the breath is right now. The breath is a really helpful barometer of how we're doing and how we're feeling. It tends to be short when we're stressed or worried or anxious. It tends to be deeper when we're relaxed and more calm. And we can kind of invite a sense of more calm, more ease by consciously deepening the breath. Just for a few breaths. You might take a nice full deep in-breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs. Just a slight pause, and then releasing a long, slow out-breath. Now at your own pace, you might take a nice full deep in-breath. And let go on the out-breath. Release. Imagine you're breathing out stresses, cares, worries, just letting them go. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Just with your breathing, inviting a sense of ease, calm. And as you're bringing awareness to your breathing, maybe for a couple more breaths, you might consciously invite a smile or half smile to your face. You might think of somebody who makes you feel happy or joyful. or warm, peaceful. And let yourself feel whatever comes up for you. Maybe there's some warmth around the heart or in the face, or not, as the case may be, just however it is. Let it be as it is. You might let the smile be an expression of how you want to meet your experience, maybe meet the world right now. Just inviting that sense of well-being, calm. The Buddha spoke of this as gladdening, one expression of gladdening the mind and the heart. Kind of priming the pump. The smile sends a message to our brain and to our nervous system that we can relax and be at ease. So letting the breath settle into its natural rhythm, however it is right now. Breathing in, breathing out. Just invite an attitude of allowing whatever is here to be as it is. Just notice the way the breath just comes and goes. You don't have to do anything to breathe. The body breathes itself. We can intervene, we can take deeper breaths, or we can take shallower breaths, or whatever. But left to its own devices, the body will breathe itself. The breath will come and go. The same way bodily sensations will come and go. So just notice whatever you're experiencing right now in the body. Can you just let the sensations come and go? Maybe there's pressure on the thighs and buttocks from the weight of your body. Maybe on your back if you're touching anything behind you, your feet. So whatever sensations are present, just letting them come, letting them be, and letting them go. You might notice any mood or emotions that are present right now. There might be some lingering tiredness, or some restlessness, of a feeling of calm or peace. Maybe there's some sadness. Maybe there's some excitement. Whatever is here, can you just let it be, let it come, let it be. When it's ready, let it go. We can notice the tendency to like certain feelings, maybe certain emotions, and not like others, want to push away others. And that's fine just to notice that. See if you can just let whatever is here be here. Let it come. Let it be. Let it go. This meeting, this moment, however this moment is for you right now, meeting it with kindness and without judgment. And if judgment comes up, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this, see if you can meet the judgment without judgment, not judging the judging, but just accepting that judging is coming up, or resistance is coming up, or wanting something is coming up, and just being aware of that. Can you rest in the awareness that can just observe whatever it is coming up without clinging, without pushing away, without judging? Just letting whatever is here come and go in its own time. Poet Dorothy Hunt says, peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. If it's helpful, you can use your breathing as a kind of home base. Just resting your attention on breathing in, breathing out, just the breath as it is. And then when you notice the mind has gone off into thought, stories or future, past, you can just gently come back again to the home base. Not a problem when the mind goes off, just to be noticed and then coming back again. See if you can rest in the awareness that knows, is conscious of all of these experiences coming and going, but actually isn't affected by them, by whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. Just this knowing quality, knowing the emotions, knowing the feelings, knowing the thoughts, just observing, letting them come, letting them go, not interfering in any way. Finish with this poem by Wendell Berry, I Go Among Trees. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet around me, like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places where I left them, asleep like cattle. Then what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, and the fear of me leaves it. It sings, and I hear its song. Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. After days of labour, mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns, the trees move. So take your time coming out of the meditative mode back into the group. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll have some movement now, and Emily will lead us. So thank you, Emily, and then we'll come back for the talk.
Thank you, Hugh. And I definitely want to lift up with this energy that we have to just feel, swaying from side to side, noticing our feet. You could have your hands at your chest, prayer position, keeping that energy from our meditation. And then opening up your arms and swaying, just as you shifted your weight from one side to the other. Engaged. Take a look where you are in this place with your body. And then open up wide, expanding out, and take a moment, soften your hands, and expand your fingers, lifting your chest. Softening the shoulders and elbows. Expand out the fingers away from your palms, and soften. Reach up, grasp the left wrist in your right hand, extending out, tilting, just lengthening from the base of that left hip. Little inhale, and what does the exhale do? Inhale up, switch, grasping the right wrist, tilting over, finding that long side length. Slight lift, soften into it, releasing somewhere for ease. Inhale up, float your arms down, allow your shoulders to roll gently, easily. Rolling the other way. And draw your hands up into cactus arms. Little work with the shoulders. So holding here, keeping the elbows up, exhale, float the arms, hands down. And rise. Hands down. Rising up. Last time. Hands down. Rising up, extend out. Take a look at your left palm. The right palm's down, but we're going to switch with the inhale and land over, looking at that right palm. Back to the left. Back to the right. Dropping your arms down, roll your shoulders individually. Just allowing freedom, gentle freedom. and roll them the other way. And just for this time, place your right wrist on top of your left. Clasp your hands together. And then draw the symbol of infinity, a sideways figure 8. The movement, like crossing the hemispheres of the brain from one side to the other, come to center, move in the opposite direction. Now, place your left wrist on top, clasp your hands, and find your symbol of infinity, of infinite possibilities. Considering this place within the energy of this group. And come to center and move the other way. And if there's confusion, that's good. One of the tenets of a sutta we looked at yesterday was no fixed view. Allowing that. Dropping your arms down just for a moment, lifting your head and chest, and we'll move to placing our hands behind our back. It's a slight back bend, so press on your feet, lifting up, grounding. Inhale, lifting your head and chest. Exhale, drawing the hands down very gently. And back. Now drop your chin to your chest, lengthening the cervical spine. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, drawing your hands down. And back to your waist flip. Find your windmill, your moment, whatever suits you. Just to be with the energy. And once more, come into a stable, standing upright position. Lifting your hands overhead, palms together. Bringing them to your heart. And take a bow. Thank you for your practice.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. And for myself, I needed that. That was been working hard the last couple of days, so that's it was very nice to come into the body. So let us know if that worked for you, having it immediately after the meditation. No fixed position on that, but it seems like it might be a nice shift in the order of things. So let us know. And so welcome to anyone who joined us since the beginning. It's nice to be together and to practice together and explore these teachings and practices together. Today I want to do something a little bit different than, the format will be pretty much the same, but just the content will be a little bit different in that, typically, certainly when I teach, the focus really and the subject matter is largely the teachings of the Buddha, and how they support us in our lives, how they help us to live with greater freedom, and a kind of a pointing to, in as practical and as concrete a way as possible, how these teachings, which were kind of elaborated, laid out almost 2,600 years ago, how they can be very relevant and beneficial in our lives today, in a hugely different culture and time than the very agrarian society in what is today northern India 2,600 years ago. And yet, certainly for me, I believe there are some absolutely central things about this being human that are as relevant and as alive today and as meaningful and as useful in our lives as they were to the farmers and merchants and business and folks of the time that Buddha lived in. So that's very much the heart of the teachings that I share, and I think we share here within IMCW and within the Centre for Mindful Living, although they can also be framed very much in terms of secular terms, as you know, in terms of mindfulness and the benefits, and that can help these teachings reach out and benefit, I think, a lot more people who might be like, oh, I don't know, they seem to be helpful, but I'm not into another religion, I'm not into the Buddhist thing necessarily. And so it's like being able to put the teachings in a language where it doesn't have to talk. We don't have to talk about the Four Noble Truths or the foundations of mindfulness. And yet, as John Kabat-Zinn and others have done, and as I've done, in other teachings, you can share these teachings without ever mentioning the Buddha more than just a quote, or in the same way as you might mention Jesus or Moses or whoever it might be, Muhammad. So the teachings of the Buddha, what we call the Dharma, although that can have a kind of a broader and a more specific meaning. It can mean the teachings of the Buddha or wisdom teachings more broadly. So the focus typically is the teachings of the Buddha. What I want to do today, and this won't be all done today, but in some coming sessions as well, what I'd like to do is explore teachings that are, I think of it as kind of Buddhist adjacent, very, very close, very compatible in the Buddhism. Some come more the Hindu tradition, or have been deepened in, which obviously has a very close relationship with Buddhism over many, many hundreds of years. But some of them come out of, from people's own experience of awakening. So what I want to begin today is to look at, different paths to freedom. So that's what I called this talk, Paths to Freedom. And, freedom, to lots of different words we can use or phrases, freedom, enlightenment, awakening, ending suffering, nirvana, paths that can be profoundly supportive in our lives, whatever the goals of our practice are, whether our goal is to completely end suffering in our lives and realize the deepest freedom that the Buddha, for example, points to, a complete transformation in our lives, through awakening, and I'll talk about awakening today. Whether that's the goal, and maybe for some of us that is like, this is possible in this human life, and that's what the Buddha is teaching, and what these other teachers are sharing as well. Or whether, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, whether our goal or what we want is a little bit more peace in our lives, a little bit more calm, a little bit more joy, a little bit more ease, freedom maybe, but without that being the kind of the fullest freedom that's possible. And a little bit less, or maybe a lot less, stress, worry, fear, anxiety, the things, aggravation, annoyance, anger, aversion, greed. Perhaps a way of putting it is ways of working with habits of the mind and habits of action, behavior that aren't helpful to us. Seeing the patterns that we get into. It could be like getting angry with our family members or getting angry with politicians, and or judging ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm this. A lot of people have that kind of, very strong self-judgment, self-criticism, and we know that that's not helpful to us. That it actually keeps us, limited, keeps us tied up in, suffering, we might call it. And we want to find kind of ways of dealing with that, a way out of those states. So wherever we put ourselves on the kind of spectrum of freedom, of ease and well-being, that's great. But whatever we do, these teachings are helpful to us, and the talk today will be fairly broad, wide-ranging, but what I want it to come back to, and I want to keep coming back to, is this question of what helps you, what helps me, what helps any of us to live with more happiness, more ease, less suffering, less agitation, less suffering in our lives. What helps us to do that? I sometimes use the metaphor of tangles. What helps us to untangle ourselves? Because a lot of us feel, we get caught up in tangles. Patterns of behavior, almost syndromes of behavior, where we're kind of acting in ways that aren't leading to our happiness, actually kind of keeping us, locked in suffering. Why am I doing this? I sometimes use that kind of words, the song from, I think, the early 80s, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for happiness in things and people that can't really provide us with happiness, but we still kind of keep going with those patterns. And so how do these teachings and practices help kind of untangle ourselves from this? As I say, mostly we focus on the Buddha's teachings, which provide this wonderfully comprehensive roadmap to the deepest freedom in this human life. But it's also important to say that there are other paths that also lead to freedom. I certainly believe this, to freedom, to enlightenment, to the end of suffering. One way of framing it is, that there's one, you might say there's one ultimate truth, and we could kind of discuss what language to put that in, but that there are many, many paths to that truth. The Buddha, you could say there's one Dharma, one essential kind of reality that we can come into contact with that will free us. And the way the Buddha put it is, all my teachings have one taste, he said, the taste of freedom. All my teachings have one taste, the taste of freedom. They're all kind of leading in that direction, like a kind of a river running towards the sea or towards the ocean. So there's one end. The freedom that we come to is the same whether we come through this path or that path. But there are different paths to freedom. There are people who have, people who've woken up to the deepest freedom through paths that are not the Buddhist path. They've maybe never even heard or read, anything about Buddhism or anything about any other particular religion or spiritual tradition. And yet they've been able to, in Buddhist language, we put it as let go of clinging and realize the deepest freedom. And the language might differ, from one tradition or one set of practices to another, but we come to the same, I believe we come to the same place. We come to a place where there's, an ending, and again, in Buddhist language would be an ending of greed and aversion and confusion. But we come to be able to live with freedom in the world. There's really no fear anymore. There's no fear, there's nothing to fear anymore. And putting aside, if you're attacked by a wild animal, you'll still have the kind of visceral experience of it. But there won't be what Eckhart Tolle speaks of as that psychological fear. The fear that comes from the stories we create. Oh, what's this person going to think about me? Or how are people going to think about this talk? Did I do a good job? And getting fearful about those kind of things, which are, in a way, kind of, I'm not going to say nonsense, but they just lead us to suffering if we get caught up in those kind of fears. And those kind of fears that are very much caught up in our own sense of identity, our sense of self that we cling to, which really in all of the teachings I'll be talking about, including the Buddhist teachings, is very much at the heart of our suffering, is this sense of this illusory self that we create and that we build, and that we protect and we defend, this sense of, I am this, I'm this person that thinks this and believes this. Why do we get so upset about people who disagree with us about, politics, for example, or about the world, I mean, if we're really free, if we're really not clinging, then what does it matter if somebody has a different set of views? We can still have ours. We can still, think it's really important to bring about these ends or those ends and do that. But we're not doing it from that kind of fearful place, that defended place, as though somehow I'll be harmed if somebody, doesn't believe the same things I do. We hold tightly, and that's where suffering comes from in the Buddha's kind of understanding and framing of the teachings. So all of that is kind of to say that I want to look today and in some upcoming sessions of other more contemporary teachings of freedom that I believe can be of great support to us, even if we see ourselves as a Buddhist, and probably majority of people here might not kind of say, oh, I'm this, or even want to call themselves any particular ism. But that, for myself, I find the teachings of the Buddha, as I think made clear, just a wonderful way of understanding both life and our own lives. And more importantly, or most importantly, helping us untangle the tangles of our lives and in very practical ways move towards greater freedom in our lives. And I think there are I find particularly with some of the teachers, and I'll speak about people like Eckhart Tolle, Adyashanti, Gangaji, people from a little bit earlier, Ramana Maharshi. I sometimes, quote some of these folks, but don't really talk very much about them. Sri Nisargadatta. I mean, some of the teachers of the 20th century that are, not from Buddhist traditions, but really point to awakening, point to ways in which we can find freedom of suffering in our lives that can really, I think, I find really enhance the teachings of the Buddha, or kind of give an aliveness to them. And what I'm going to focus on are teachers and teachings that are really pointing to the way in which there's nowhere that we need to get to, that really point to the ways in which freedom is already here. It is already who we are. And that when we realize that, when we realize that deeply, that really is awakening. We awaken to who we truly are. So if there's one main way in which, and this isn't really black and white, but if there's any real way that the most significant way these teachings kind of are distinct from the Buddha's teachings is the Buddha really teaches a gradual path to awakening. You cultivate these qualities, these skillful qualities of generosity, gratitude, wise speech, compassion, loving kindness, all of, a whole range of qualities of heart and mind that will help support us in moving to greater freedom. That's on one side of the ledger. And on the other side of the ledger, you let go of the unwholesome qualities. You let go of greed. You let go of hatred. You let go of clinging. You let go of blame and judgment and all of these qualities that we know don't serve us. And yet we do get caught up in them. We let go of all forms of unconsciousness, lack of awareness that just takes us down the path of suffering. Excuse me. So those two sides, you cultivate what the Buddha spoke about as cultivating the good and abandoning the unskillful. And it's very much a gradual path. What these other teachings of some of the teachers I've named, their path is much more focused on immediacy. And the term I use, and this is purely a term that I find helpful for myself, and if it's useful to you, then you might use it or not use it, but just kind of see it as a framework. Because what I'm pulling together are teachers and teachings that are, not part of, so these are all one tradition, one school. There's variety there. But what I think they have in common is that they're pointing to the fact that we're already free, that freedom is here. It's not something that we need to get to, like I'm here and I'm not free, and somehow if I do this and do this and do this, I will become free. They're much more focused on, the greater emphasis is on, freedom is here right now. And that's probably, a good point to just pause for a moment, because some of this stuff can get a little bit heady, and just come back to your own experience right here and right now. Just turn your attention inward. You might ask yourself, do I feel free in this moment right now? You could turn the question around a little. You say, what, if anything, is in the way of being completely free, completely at peace in this moment, right now? Not next moment, not tomorrow, not yesterday, this moment. What's in the way? And simply notice what comes up for you. Just notice what comes up. Not to do anything, but just notice. If we had a little time, and you please feel free to share anything, in the chat, just, if anything did come up for you. But it'd be nice to kind of explore, what came up for you just in that minute or so, a minute and a half. What came up? I mean, what I find for myself, what comes up, and also working with other people, is often something that, something's happening right now. Maybe there's some discomfort. I've got a pain in my back, or I'm feeling really tired, or I'm restless right now. That might seem like it's like, I can't really be peaceful. I can't really be free because I'm feeling tired, or I'm feeling restless, or I'm feeling anxious. But we can then just step back and say, can I really be at peace in the midst of this? In the midst of feeling tired or restless or whatever it might be, sad? Can I be sad and yet still be at peace? Can I let sadness be here? Can I let restlessness be here? Can I let kind of an anxious thought be here? But just observe that, let it come and go. Typically what gets in the way, it may be something like that, or it may be like, yeah, but I've got that presentation to do tomorrow. So it's the story of something in the future, or, I said that thing to my friend yesterday, and they must be I'm feeling so bad because I didn't mean, they're probably taking it the wrong way. So the mind gets caught up in this stuff, the past, the future, and it's like, but now, why is that bothering my peace right now? And does it need to bother my peace right now? It only bothers my peace and my freedom right now because I'm letting it. I'm letting it. I'm kind of choosing to put my energy into my worry about what happened, or my judgment about what I did yesterday. But do I need to do that? Can I be at peace right here, right now? Even, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, Bettina, just to sharing, missing loved ones from the past, grief. Now, and just to ask yourself, can I be at peace? Can I be free in the midst of these feelings arising, so that the feelings of sadness or missing somebody doesn't need to be a problem? It can be here, and you can be at peace in the midst of that. There's a share, and Melissa, fear of the future, missing those from the past. So the future, that fear coming up, can you be aware of that fear? Okay, noticing the fear or noticing the worry, and yet just let that be here as well. That's just part of the changing flow of experience. Does it need, I think a question to ask is, does it need to be in the way of being really at peace, really, really free in this moment? And it's always and ever, always and always this moment. Because the future is just a story in the mind. Who knows if we'll ever make it to the future? And the past is simply a memory. All we're ever really needing to deal with is this moment here. Certainly we can think about the future and we can think about the past, but are we thinking about it in a way where it's open and easy and, I've got that thing to take care of tomorrow, and be at peace with that, be at home with that, be at ease with that, rather than this being somewhat like entrapped by the future. Oh no, I've got this thing coming up tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to do it. And all these things will happen. And all these stories in the mind. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. I mean, I do. We all experience this, different versions of it. And yet, do we need to, and the freedom that these other teachers that I'm speaking about and beginning to speak about, and I'm going to now get into just some of their just quotes that are easily available, easily found. So just stepping back a sec, I'm kind of giving this frame of these teachings as already free. We're already free. It's here. And if we can meet the present moment just as it is, then there's really nothing more we need to do. We don't need to do elaborate trainings. We don't need to do 100,000 prostrations. We don't need to read 50 books or do 20 courses. It's here. It's right here, right now. So it's much more of a focus on the immediacy of freedom here and now, and less on you do this and you train the mind and you do this. And again, I'd be very clear, I'm not wanting to make this at all black and white, as though this is all about this and the Buddha's teachings are all about that. Not at all. And within the Buddhist tradition, there are teachings, I say particularly in the Tibetan tradition and some Zen traditions, which are very close to these other teachings that I'm talking about. But let's get down to some practical, some quotes, I think, that you may kind of make it real. This is from Adyashanti, who's, I think, very, very central, kind of a very significant teacher in the current period. He retired from formal teaching in the last few months, but no doubt he'll still be writing books and other things going on. I find him a wonderfully clear and just a wonderful teacher. He speaks about awakening. He says, awakening reveals our already perfect inherent freedom. It's the willingness to meet sincerely and honestly what is happening in our body and mind. That is always the doorway to freedom, a freedom that only happens now, and now, and now, and now. It's a lovely talk he has, and if I can do it, work it out time-wise, I'll share just a few resources from these teachers a little later, but he has a wonderful talk called The Always and Already. The Always and Already, I think, is what it's called. And it's really pointing to this freedom is always here and it's already here. It's not something we need to really get to. And I want to just read a couple of quotes from another teacher who's very adjacent in many ways, I think, to Adyashanti. Her name is Gangaji, or her kind of spiritual name, if you like, is Gangaji. She was a student of another teacher named Punja, and his kind of what he's affectionately known as was Papaji. He died about 20 years ago now, yeah. And Papaji was in turn a student of Ramana Maharshi, one of the great sages of the mid-20th century, early mid-20th century period. So there's kind of a lineage in there. But this is I think, a really nice quote, a couple of quotes from Gangaji. She said, the Punja or Papaji mainly gave his teachings in India. And she, along with a lot of other Western folks, went out there to study with him and practice with him. And she spoke to him. She asked a question. She told him, I want freedom. I want to be free of all my entanglements and misconceptions. I want to know if final, absolute truth is real. Tell me what to do. And then the teacher said, first he said, you're in the right place. Then he said, do nothing. Your whole problem is that you continue doing. Stop all your doing. Stop all your beliefs, all your searching, all your excuses, and see for yourself what is already and always here. Again, that's similar again. Already and always here. Don't move. Don't move toward anything, and don't move away. In this instant, be still. In this instant, be still. So again, just pausing and just that kind of taking that in, if you can, just that sense of that stopping, a stopping of sense. I've got to do this in order to do this, and then I'll be free, or I'll be freer. Just stop, turn inward, and know that the freedom is here right now. And here is another a quote from Gangaji herself. The truth of who you are is untouched by any concept of who you are, whether ignorant or enlightened, worthless or grand. The truth of who you are is free of it all. You are already free. And all that blocks your realization of that freedom is your attachment to some thought of who you are. So that this sense of identifying with the story of yourself. The thought doesn't keep you from being the truth of who you are. You already are that. It separates you from the realization of who you are. So we're already free in this kind of framing, this understanding. You're already free. I'm already free. But what gets in the way of that is that the stories we create about who we are, the identification we have. She says, you already are that. She says, what stops you from realizing it is your attachment to some thought of who you are. That separates you from the realization of who you are. So it's one thing to say to people or to anyone, you're already free. You're already free. But if you don't realize that, what good is it? Does that make sense? There's Adyashanti, it quotes a Zen teacher who says, you're already free. That's true. But fat lot of good it does you if you don't realize it. So something we're already free, but we have to realize it. So what helps us realize it? What helps us realize it is letting go of the story and the identification with who we think we are or who we would like to be. The story of me, the story of you. What is this story that you tell, that I tell, that you tell? So just a couple more, just quick quotes in terms of these other teachers. Sri Nisargadatta, who is a 20th century Indian spiritual teacher, says, all you need is to stop searching outside for what can be found only within. One is always free. You are both conscious and free to be conscious. Nobody can take this away from you. I don't have it here. Another one from Ramana Maharshi, one of the great spiritual sages of the 20th century. He's asked Bhagawan, who's kind of an honorific title, please tell me as to how I can realize myself. And then Ramana replies, you know that means believing that you're not. Just be as you are. Just be as you are. So in some upcoming talks and kind of continuing exploring some of these teachings and also kind of looking at them side by side with the Buddha's teachings and how they can support kind of these understandings and this path that the Buddha lays out, which I think they can in very, 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 very helpful ways. We'll get into that more in the future. But just in these final few minutes, I want to just highlight some of the things that these teachings, like the ones I'd mentioned, Adyashanti, I didn't mention I didn't mention Eckhart Tolle, just maybe, probably more familiar with him perhaps than there's some of these other teachers, the power of now. And basically, kind of the core of his teachings is that to be fully present here and now is to be free, is to live in freedom. We experience suffering, disconnection, anxiety, fear when we become lost in the mind, in our stories, in our narratives, and in living unconsciously when we're in the past, in the future. So he sees being caught up in time as very much a cause of our suffering. He says the present moment holds the key to liberation, but you cannot find the present moment as long as you are your mind, as long as you are your stories, your narratives. You cannot really be in the present moment. So the present moment is the key. He says there's no salvation in time. You cannot be free in the future. Presence is the key to freedom. So you can only be free now. So just in the last final few minutes, I want to point to some of the things these Buddhist teachings and these teachings have in common. The first is, I think, the recognition that awakening, the deepest freedom, is possible in this human life. As I mentioned, for the Buddha, it's a path of training to let go of clinging to end suffering. Mindfulness is a key, a direct path to liberation. For these teachers and teachings I'm putting under this heading of already free, it's the recognition that freedom is right here, right now, in front of our very noses. And we just need to see it. We don't need to do a lot of elaborate practices, a lot of doing. And in these seen as an obstacle, and it can be. We feel like if I'm going to be free, I really need to do more. I really need to really do this practice. I need to do more practices, or I need to understand more. I found for people who share these teachings, meditation teachers, Dharma teachers, there can be a thing of, certainly as we're, early on in that teaching, we can think we need to know more in order to share what we have to share. Sometimes it's helpful to know more, but there can be a lot of clinging in that, I need to read more, one more article, and then I'll really have this idea down, and then I'll be able to share it. And it's another form of clinging, it's another form in which, we create a sense of self. It's as though I won't be a good enough version of myself for people unless I have this to share, And so it's like, it's all about this recreation of self and how that gets in the way of our freedom. Eckhart Tolle, he advises people who are in part his community who want to teach, said, don't have things prepared. Just talk, speak from the heart, And I think for most people, I prepare talks, and people I respect, Tara Brach and others, even the ones, I find you need some kind of sense of this is where I'm going, because otherwise you don't necessarily, and we want to do as good enough job as you can of sharing these teachings. As Adyashanti speaks about it, I love this. He says, teaching in these teachings, you're going to fail. It's going to be a story of failure, because you're never going to be able to give people freedom. All you can ever do is point. So he says, what I want to do is I want to fail well. I want to fail well. So that, I think, is a very good aspiration for anyone wanting to teach, is to fail well, because we're not going to be able to do more than point to, how freedom, how we can free ourselves, because we always have to free ourselves. Nobody can do it for us. So anyway, last 2 minutes is to say, freedom is possible, and that freedom comes from has to be in the present moment. For the Buddha, it's mindfulness as a direct path to liberation, to seeing clearly. And similarly, for these, already free teachers, it's bringing just a non-controlling awareness to our experience and allowing whatever is here to be here, as we were doing in the meditation. Another thing is the end of, for all of these teachings from the Buddha and these more contemporary teachers, the end of each of these paths is really the same. Is that we come to the same place. We come to awaken to who we truly are. And whether it's through a gradual path, as the Buddha's path, it still has to come from a breaking through. You could do, 100 courses and 10,000 hours of practice, and you could do trainings and everything, but it won't lead you to freedom. It may help create the conditions. There has to be some breaking through. There's a breaking through. There's something that doesn't come out of an accumulation of anything. It comes out of the mystery, of life. That is whether it comes gradually or suddenly. The important thing about the gradual training is it's said that awakening is really an accident. And that's what I'm pointing to. It comes out of the mystery. But practice, as they say in Zen, makes us accident prone. The practice makes us more prone towards make it happen, but it makes it more, it creates the conditions for that letting go. The letting go is always like, in some way the baby bird breaking out of the egg. There's something mysterious about the timing of that. So let me pause it here. I was going to point to some of the differences, but we'll come to those in future sessions. But let's finish up here. There we go. Finish up here and maybe just take a moment to just sit in the silence. And just hold whatever is present for you right now. Maybe there's something that was shared that's helpful. Maybe other things can be let go of. Just whatever is here right now. So thank you for your kind attention.